Welcome back, readers. As you know, last week we finished reading The Hunger Games for popular books from around 2010. This week, we're going all the way back to the 1860s. What would you do if you found a document from a renowned scientist telling you there was a world inside of ours? Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne has exactly that, and while it may sound ludicrous, there were a lot of scientific theories in the book that made it seem less ridiculous. Our story takes place in 1863, starting in Hamburg, Germany. Professor Hardwigg discovers a manuscript written by Arne Saknussemm, a famous philosopher and alchemist. The professor spends days trying to decipher it. Meanwhile, his nephew, Axel, has already translated it. Once he figured it'd do more harm than good to keep the meaning of the manuscript from his uncle, Axel tells him it claims to have found a passageway to the center of the earth. They argue about the likelihood of this theory. It was common knowledge at the time that the further you went into the earth, the hotter it got. But the professor was stubborn and told him to pack whatever he felt was necessary for the trip. The next morning they departed, and Axel bid farewell to his cousin and fiancée Gretchen. They traveled to Reykjavik, Iceland, where they met a guide called Hans. He didn't say much, but he was loyal and went wherever the professor went, and he was a great help along the journey. The three of them then made their way to Mount Snuffles, an extinct volcano. Once they got there, they descended into the great crater. The next step was waiting for the sun to shine through the clouds and show them the path to the center of the earth. Finally, after waiting a few days, they were shown the path. The impatient professor demanded they head out immediately. At this point, they were already getting low on their supply of water, but the professor promised they'd find it when they got there. As they walk, Axel notices many different kinds of rocks that are known to be at certain layers of the earth. He tries to convince the professor they've gone the wrong way, but he won't have it. They continue their trek, running low on water, and the professor finally admits his mistake. They turn around, now out of water, and go back to where they started. Axel thinks that maybe they'll return to civilization now, for obvious reasons, but the professor has other plans. He gives an almost dead Axel the last of his hidden stash of water, and they continue their journey. This time they take the correct path, though they still had no water. But Hans, the hardy Icelandic hunter, ventures ahead and hears the sound of running water. He brings the others to the sound, but it's behind a wall of rock. They take out their pickaxe and gently break through. They drink what they can and replenish their water supply, and, feeling refreshed, they once again head out. They continue for a few days with no big problems, until Axel takes the lead. He ends up walking faster than the others and loses them. He retraces his steps, or so he thinks, to find them. He gets lost. Finally, they find each other, right after Axel takes a nice little fall and injures his head. He wakes to find himself and his uncle near an underground ocean. Hans is already building a raft to sail across as they get all their provisions in order. The next day they set sail. It's calm and they move along at a speedy rate. They even try fishing, and they catch several species of fish that have been extinct for a very long time now. As they sail further, they start seeing a few other peculiar species. They sail right into the middle of a fight between two prehistoric sea creatures and just barely make it out without incident. Shortly after this, there was a massive storm, and during that storm, a little ball of electricity flew around their raft. When they finally made it back to shore, the professor checked the compass to see whereabouts they were now in relation to the continents above. But when he checked it, the compass said they were right back where they started. They later discovered this was due to that little ball of electricity they encountered. It messed with the magnetic pull of the needle. While Hans repaired the raft, the professor and Axel went exploring and found the knife of Arne Saknussemm. It was near a solid wall of rock they found to be the entrance to the center of the earth. They got a safe distance away on the raft and blew a hole in the rock. What they didn't prepare for was that when they blew up the rock, it sent a shockwave through the ocean and caused it to start flowing through the fissure they created. There was nothing they could do to stop it, so they all just held on tight as the current pulled them in. They ascended rapidly with the water for quite some time before they figured out they were in a volcanic tube. They were expelled through the volcano and found themselves in Sicily, Italy. Once they made their way back to Germany, Axel married his cousin, and the professor became widely known for this risky adventure. Now, while I have given a fairly accurate summary, just remember, folks, the book is always better. So we'll be starting the first chapter soon. To continue introducing the book, though, keep in mind that this book took place in the 1860s, so there will be many things that will seem unfamiliar or odd. Just as how I mentioned a few times that Axel married his cousin Gretchen. Back then, it wasn't a huge deal, and many people did it, like Charles Darwin, Einstein, so many others. Today, though, we all think, ew, that's so gross, I could never marry my cousin, that's disgusting. I agree, the idea of marrying one of my cousins is... Blech. It's also common knowledge now that the center of the Earth is in fact a solid metal core surrounded with a liquid metal outer core. So, as much as it pains me to crush the dreams of some of you adventurous folks out there, it would not be possible for you to make this journey. Sorry. We'll see a few more small differences from then to now as we progress through the book. So let's start the first chapter, shall we? Looking back to all that has occurred to me since that eventful day, I am scarcely able to believe in the reality of my adventures. They are truly so wonderful that even now I am bewildered when I think of them. My uncle was a German, having married my mother's sister, an Englishwoman. Being very much attached to his fatherless nephew, he invited me to study under him in the home of the fatherland. This home was in a large town, and my uncle was a professor of philosophy, chemistry, geology, mineralogy, and many other ologies. One day, after passing some hours in the laboratory, my uncle being absent at the time, I suddenly felt the necessity of renovating the tissues. I was hungry, and I was about to rouse up our old French cook when my uncle, Professor von Hardwig, suddenly opened the street door and came rushing upstairs. Now, Professor Hardwig, my worthy uncle, is by no means a bad sort of man. He is, however, choleric and original. To bear with him means to obey. And scarcely had his heavy feet resounded within our joint domicile than he shouted for me to attend upon him. "Harry! Harry! Harry!" I hastened to obey, but before I could reach his room, jumping 3 steps at a time, he was stamping his foot upon the landing. "Harry," he cried in a frantic tone, "are you coming up?" Now, to tell the truth, at that moment I was far more concerned in the question as to what was to constitute our dinner than in any problem of science. To me, soup was more interesting than soda, an omelette more tempting than arithmetic, and an artichoke of 10 times more value than any amount of asbestos. But my uncle was not a man to be kept waiting, so adjourning therefore all minor questions, I presented myself before him. He was a very learned man. Now, most persons in this category supply themselves with information, as paddlers do with goods, for the benefit of others, and lay up stores in order to diffuse them abroad for the benefit of society in general. Not so my excellent uncle, Professor Hardwig. He studied, he consumed the midnight oil, he pored over heavy tomes, and digested huge quartos and folios in order to keep the knowledge acquired to himself. There was a reason, and it may be regarded as a good one, why my uncle objected to display his learning more than was absolutely necessary. He stammered, and when intent upon explaining the phenomena of the heavens, was apt to find himself at fault and allude in such a vague way to sun, moon, and stars that few were able to comprehend his meaning. To tell the honest truth, when the right word would not come, it was generally replaced by a very powerful adjective. In connection with the sciences, there are many almost unpronounceable names very much resembling those of Welsh villages. And my uncle, being very fond of using them, his habit of stammering was not thereby improved. In fact, there are periods in his discourse when he would finally give up and swallow his discomfiture in a glass of water. As I said, my uncle, Professor Hardwig, was a very learned man, and now I might add a most kind relative. I was bound to him by the double ties of affection and interest. I took deep interest in all his doings, and hoped someday to be almost as learned myself. It was a rare thing for me to be absent from his lectures. Like him, I preferred mineralogy to the other sciences. Alright, looks like we're out of time today. I promise the book will get more interesting the further you get into it. It's just the introduction and the use of big words that even I don't know. So join me next week to finish Chapter 1, read Chapter 2, and discuss some important topics from both chapters. Thanks, see y'all next week.
Till I find you.